We have heard our word this morning from Hebrews 7. And thank you, children, for leading us in worship today. I was not much older than many of these children when the television show The Simpsons started. They are in the midst of their 30th season, and that's hard to believe. And I really didn't get a lot of the humor back then. It's even though it's cartoon, it's really kind of adult humor, right? But it's brilliant satire. I can remember the flap when Bart Simpson first wore the underachiever T-shirt, and people thought that they were glorifying underachieving. And really, it's a satire of the different types of social situations we find ourselves in, and the way that people respond and react to different things. And now there's this one episode in which Homer comes to faith. He gets religion. In fact, he finds himself in great danger, and he begins calling out and praying up to Jeebus because he doesn't get his name right, obviously. Now, we might think that the producers of The Simpsons were making fun of us for our faith, but really they're making fun of human nature, the human nature of turning to anything at times for salvation. Because we will look to all kinds of things to save us, won't we? When we find ourselves in some real or perceived danger, we can put our trust in so many things, and we often do, whether it's money or power or social standing or occupation or relationships or personal heroes that we look to give us hope or joy in good times and salvation in rough times. For Homer Simpson, Jeebus wasn't really a savior, was he? He didn't really know Jeebus, obviously, because he didn't even know him well enough to get his name right. I think of the people in the Old Testament who went to one god after another. They went to the god of the Ammonites, and they went to the god of the Jebusites, and they went to the gods of the Philistines. And when those all failed, they went to gods that they created with their own hands, wooden gods that they carved. That's Jeebus to Homer. And I certainly hope that Jesus means a great deal more to us. Our author of Hebrews points out that there are many, many priests. There were many, many priests throughout the Old Testament and into the time of the New Testament. There were priests in the temple, and the priests had the role of being intermediaries or intercessors on behalf of the people. The role of the priest was to offer sacrifices to God for the sins of the people, to cleanse them. And this was something that had to take place constantly. Why? Because the people sinned. And then they would be cleansed, and then they would sin again and have to be cleansed again. Right? And so the priests would come and go. They were human, and so they came and they passed on, and new priests took those positions. But in Jesus Christ, Hebrews is telling us, we have one priest for all time who has made one sacrifice for all time. Jesus is able, Hebrews tells us, for all time to save those who approach God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. That is, this priest lives forever. And he did once for all when he offered himself, it later says, that is, he has made one sacrifice of himself that was sufficient for all sin, for all time. And so we see that while Jesus is a priest, he is a priest unlike any other. He has given a sacrifice that has eliminated our sin, our waywardness, and cleansed us of that in the eyes of God. So this isn't just someone that we might turn to in a line of others who might offer us salvation, but the one to turn to, always and for all time. And because of what Christ has done for us, because of who Christ is, because Christ lives on, we have a life abundant and eternal to share. I encountered a story a few years back that Al Andrews, who's a blogger, an author and a blogger among other things, and he wrote about Don Ritchie. Now, Don Ritchie, he tells us at this time, about 6 years ago, was 84 years old and had recently received a bravery medal and the Order of Australia, the country's second highest honor. And he got the award because he saves lives. And Andrews tells us the story that Don and his wife, Maura, bought a house overlooking Sydney Harbor about 40 years before this article in an area called the Gap. Some of you may have seen pictures of this. It's very scenic. It has stunning views of the cliffs and the water. What they didn't know when they bought the house was that across the street was a spot from which at least 50 people a year had jumped to their demise. And most people would have moved from that spot the day they arrived, but Don decided to do something about it. And so through his large picture window, he kept his eye on the area across the street. And if he saw someone lingering, he would walk across the road and say hello and offer them a cup of tea. He describes the first person that he encountered in that way. I said to her, "Why don't you come over and have a cup of tea?" She came with me, and Moya made her breakfast. When she got home, she rang to say she was feeling much better. 2 or 3 months later, she walked up the garden path with a magnum of French champagne. Over the years, Don has coaxed hundreds of people back from the edge with his invitation. But for some, his kind words were the last thing they heard. "I'm just trying to save a life," he says. "I used to sell kitchen scales and bacon cutters. At the Gap, I'm trying to sell people life." And no wonder he's known as the angel of the Gap, at the Gap. Selling people life, Andrews continues. I love that phrase. What if we all lived with that generosity of heart? Spending our days surveying the landscape with an eager vigilance, watching for those who linger at the brink and inviting them over for tea and the chance to live. We have that power of life, friends. We have that power of life because Christ has given it to us. A power that has been given to us once and for all. We need not wallow. We need not declare ourselves righteous in a self-righteous and glorified way, but we need not wallow in our sin because we've been given a gift of abundance and hope that we can offer to others. Don Ritchie says he sells life, but I like to think that he gives people back their lives, just as Christ gives us back our life from the ways that we give it away to others or to things or to sin. We have an amazing power of life and restoration. Now, friends, there has been, once again this week, shocking, sad news of tragic events, a series of them this past week. And this kind of violence is all too common. I think we'd all agree. But we have a power. We continue to have a power of life and goodness and hope and restoration. We as a church, we feed people physically and spiritually. We offer people meaning and purpose. We share friendship and concern, love and kindness. And these are the things of life. And we extend Christ's offer of that eternal and abundant and joyful life to others. We can help others to choose to live in that life, and we can bless others through living together rather than taking lives and threatening communities. We offer abundant life and hope because we have the power, not because we have the power to give it, but because Christ has given us a life to give and a life to share. And so we celebrate that. It's not by living in the law, as the people tried for generations, but required priest after priest to make sacrifice after sacrifice. It's not by our merit that we have this life, but it is a life freely and joyfully given to us that we can live and share together and with the world. We share this in our fellowship events and worship, in Sunday school, in our mission efforts, in our education efforts, and in many ways, including our small group offerings. And we have a video this morning, as we've had every Sunday this past month. This video is from our stewardship committee, and we're going to be hearing about our small group ministries here at the church.
First Presbyterian Church, we joyfully seek to follow Jesus and extend God's loving community to all people. One of the best ways to extend and grow our loving community with close personal relationships is through small groups. The whole purpose of small groups is to take what we do in the traditional church setting, but to build relationships on top of that. Relationships that we get to know each other more than just the 5 minutes before or after a church service, but to really know those things that are our deepest joys and concerns. So small groups have the purpose of bringing a personal element to the relationships in our church. We meet regularly in small groups to grow in our spiritual knowledge and study of the Bible, and also for evangelical outreach. Small groups can be any group of people that gather together in the church for the purpose of glorifying God, building better relationships, and reaching out in the community. Some small groups are consistent and happen on a regular basis. Other small groups pop up around a certain topic or interest or need, such as over the summer, we've had small groups around financial peace, and we've had small groups around married couples that would like to grow in their relationship together. For different purposes, you could consider the choir a small group, or Presbyterian women. That is a small group as well. Men's breakfast is definitely a small group. Or the people that get together every week to cook the wow suppers. The people that get together every week to cook food for the daily bread guests. One of the small groups that we have right now that I'm in is the Busy Moms small group. Our Busy Moms small group is a really vital, growing, and active ministry in our church. It brings together moms with school-age kids who have busy, hectic lives and gives them a chance to connect with one another, a chance that they didn't have in the regular activities of the church. In this small group, they can do a Bible study, they can chat and fellowship, but most importantly of all, we share joys and concerns that touch us deeply and really build a strong Christian fellowship with one another. And members of that group have then become members of our church, and then we get new visitors to come and join the group every semester. It's really lively and a great spiritual food for everyone that can be a part of it. One of the dreams of the church is to continue to grow small group ministry, to be able to reach more and more people in that personal way. To do that, we could use an expansion of the small group budget. Some things that the small group budget could provide are new curriculum, childcare. As you can imagine, the busy moms have very busy and active kids who, by the way, some of them say that's their favorite activity at church is going to the busy moms meetings. And other ideas that we haven't even had yet for new small groups could be funded with an expanded budget. We're also thinking of expanding the small group budget to include some money for retreats that might pop up around the new confirmation class. They would like to take a retreat this next year. Also in February, we're planning a church-wide retreat that could use some extra funding to make it more affordable for more members to be able to attend. Any place that the church is growing and building community, serving God and serving each other in personal and interrelational ways is a small group. All we have to do is put intention and purpose around it, especially with the idea of bringing in new people. That's the key. That's when we take our loving community from inside of the walls of this church out into greater Conway. That's what everyone really wants. Close personal relationships with others that will help to mimic their close and personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Praise